This is a series of videos on how non-duality and native wisdom intersect. And we've gone through some very interesting things. We've been talking about how language works in our heads, how our thoughts actually are language. And we've gone and we've looked at history and how all of these things make our worldview of who we think we are as human beings. And then who we think we are as human beings, of course, um, creates the spirituality that various cultures have. It's spirituality creates the culture, and the culture creates the spirituality. The spirituality is in response to the culture very often, and spirituality also creates the culture. So when I say that non-duality and native wisdom intersect, I am not saying that they're the same thing. I know in non-duality we're not supposed to talk about the fact that there's two things in the world, but these are two very distinct, different things. Native wisdom comes from native cultures which have not been infected by civilization yet. Non-duality comes from a culture that is extremely hierarchical. It's like really like the opposite of native wisdom. So I'm not saying that there's something similar about the two. I'm talking how they intersect. And what I mean by that is native wisdom shows us our potential of who we could be. And we have beautiful philosophers and writers coming forward and telling us, bringing this native wisdom to us it's almost like a waterfall, a volcano of information is starting to be made available. So native wisdom is telling us how we can live our fullest potential. Non-duality is a tool that comes from a very broken society. Again, I gotta say, let's be honest. Take a real look at the societies that all these things come from, and you'll find a very, very hierarchical, brutally hierarchical society. Women are treated terribly. The caste system, I mean, the horrors of that are incredible. And in the Hindu tradition, you have all these different levels of people. And you can't move from level to level in one lifetime. You're born into something, and there's a whole philosophy that says, oh, you deserve to be rich, or oh, you deserve to be poor. It's a society with tremendous suffering in it. And notice what's one of the basic philosophies of non-duality is how to step out of that suffering, how to stop suffering, even though your society's like horrible. Now we're back to where I was saying how spirituality creates the culture. Without this kind of drug, people trying to become enlightened so that they're not suffering anymore. Everyone's focusing on that instead of focusing on, well, let's fix the society. Let's find out a better way to live. So, okay, off track. But these are two very, very different things. Native spirituality and, the Hinduism that non-duality comes from. But the reason I say it's important to look at these two things is that non-duality actually is the key of how we can get back into this native worldview. The big difference, and hopefully you've noticed this thread going through all of my videos, the big difference is getting over the lie that comes from the non-duality world that attaining this enlightenment is really hard to do, because that's part of what keeps that society in slavery. If just imagine the entire Hindu world coming from a worldview that enlightenment was not only easy and simple to attain, but that it was your birthright, and everyone was born into these amazing enlightened families, enlightened societies. That would be a totally different place. So I'm wanting to get rid of that one lie that it's really, really hard to do. Then look at non-duality with the blinders off and go, is this a useful technique? It's like, yes, it is. Yes, it's an extremely useful technique, because basically what non-duality says, there's not two inside you. There are tons of things. There's me and there's you. We're both different people. There's you and there's that other guy. Totally different people. But there are not two beings inside you. You don't have a happy person and a sad person inside there. You don't have a smart one and a dumb one. You don't have, the voice of your mother and the voice of your father, stuck inside your head. All those things are not you. There's only one you. Perfect little example is the story of Eckhart Tolle reaching enlightenment. He was very, very depressed, and he's just getting ready to commit suicide, and he thinks, I can't take myself anymore. And he suddenly stopped and goes, wait, how many are in here? I can't take myself anymore. Wait, that self doesn't exist. All that's in here is just me. I'm the only thing in here. So this is the key of non-duality, to show us that we can very quickly drop this false self. And I'm trying to describe this false self not as some weird thing that's captured you in some weird way, but the conditionings that you have been given by your society. That's what the false self is. It's just this tape recorder going over and over and over in your head, telling you who you are, when actually you aren't any of that. There is only one person alive in each of us. I'm me, you're you. Simplest concept in the whole world. And once you can really grasp that, oh, I'm me, now you can start making some choices, and you can go, okay, so then what is the worldview that is going to most serve me? And then you're going to go, oh, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense, because all of a sudden you've stepped into this place where your selfishness is gone. It's not necessary. The actual you is this like blend of everything in the world. So what's going to most serve all of us? I'm saying native wisdom is what it is. And I'm also saying that you can just sit down and just study native wisdom, but you're going to spin around in circles and trying to figure out what it means, and you're going to put hundreds and thousands of misinterpretations on top of it, unless you actually do this non-duality work to clear yourself of the addiction to all those stories that you've been told. You have to be willing to sit in a place of zero in order to let this new information really come in, and then start figuring out, okay, so now what do we do? What do you want? What do you and I do now about this? How do we meet? How do we live in our world? So I'm talking about how native wisdom and non-duality intersect. I'm not talking about how they're already the same. Hope that makes a little sense.